Welcome back to BNN News. Immigrant advocates are questioning Governor Baker's new policy on detentions for possible deportation. The policy would apply to persons already being held by the state police for criminal charges. In those cases, the immigration status of the persons being held would be checked with federal officials. To explain their concerns with the policy are the Executive Director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, Espinoza-Madrigal, and the Executive Director of the East Boston Ecumenical Community Council, or EBECC, Frank Ramirez. Thank you both very much for being with us.
Thank you.
I want to start with Ivan. On the surface here, the policy seems as if in certain cases this could be helpful. There could be some very dangerous people that would otherwise slip from the radar screen, and maybe this is what we need to get some more protection.
It could be that we are able to bring into this ambit of enforcement a few bad apples. But I think we really have to think about what is the cost of that accomplishment. Is that worth creating a chilling effect for witnesses of crime or witnesses of crime, witnesses or victims of crime who will no longer be comfortable stepping forward and trusting state police because they now see them as immigration deportation officers? I think that's an important issue here. Is instead of embracing more of the community and making sure that they could come forward to collaborate with law enforcement, this type of policy, even if well-intended in the manner that you described, could have very damaging consequences in pushing people deeper into the shadows.
Frank, you know East Boston. There are a lot of people there right now. I'm sure they're very worried about some very bad gang members, and the governor's saying this is about gang members. But how do you think people feel about the governor's policy?
I think that there is a lot of concern because, number one, there is the level of comfort within the community to deal with law enforcement, still is not there. There is a lot of suspicion. There is fear, quite frankly. And I think that, immigrant groups are more, or families even, are more ready to collaborate, let's say, with the local police, that they know, that they are looking for something, that seeing, let's say, a state trooper or someone like that, or even someone from ICE, they really go back into the hiding, to go back into the shadow. So to really create that level of trust with the community, the local police enforcement actually had to do a lot of community policing, gaining the trust, and when there is this perception, that they can be confused, by someone who had committed a crime. And also the language of the new policy is that you may be here illegal or have committed an illegal act. Well, by definition, if I am undocumented here, I may consider, that I am quote unquote illegal, and therefore, I don't want to expose myself, to be removed from my home and being placed in one of those retention centers.
And that's really critical, because then that means that these individuals that Frank's talking about are not going to come forward when they see crimes being perpetrated in their blocks, even if the crime didn't involve them. It could be a U.S. citizen, it could be another American, another community member, but they no longer come forward.
This is BNN News. We're talking with Ivan Espinoza-Madrigal of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Frank Ramirez of EBECC. Frank, another thing here is that you could have people who are either victimized or threatened by criminals. Talk about maybe there's a parent whose son is being harassed by gangs, and they want to turn for help to somebody, someone in law enforcement, right? So what does this mean now?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Very similar what, Ivan was saying, that, it is a matter of degree, what I fear most. Do I fear most, that my child may be involved in gang, or do I fear most that even that my kids may be even, abused or something, by the police, or that I even, again, may be confused, because of my status, as a non-documented, immigrant, and be deported or something like that. So there is a great gradient, I would say, of fear. What is most what situation is more fearful. But also, I think that in East Boston, it has been a very good and successful effort, with collaboration from the community, from parents. There have been meetings between the police department and the community. Just recent, about a month ago, at East Boston High School, and I think that they were very successful in terms of asking the community, that they see something suspicious, to report her without fear of being, persecuting themselves, or being, subject to some kind of inquiry, that may be pursued by the community, and they are after, all immigrants there. So there have been a good amount of collaboration, in communication between, the local police and members of the community.
Yvonne, in practice, what are at least the potential dangers of the policy? Yes, there's a potential gain on the one hand, but for instance, just even the definition of maybe holding people who are already being held on criminal charges, what range of charges could that be?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is one of the most fussy parts of what we're talking about, which is it doesn't seem to be limited. And so it can open the door to potential liability for the state or for jurisdictions that are following this type of policy. Because let's admit it, when the state does this, it opens the door for other people to follow suit. And so instead of setting a moral high ground, what we see here is that the state is following an anti-immigrant policy that more resembles what you would have in Alabama or Arizona. And so there's liability for an extended detention, for prolonged detainment of individuals. There's also liability associated with potential racial profiling. And we also have serious concerns with the complexity of interpreting some provisions of immigration law. This is a very complex area of law, and state police are not trained in this. They don't have any background in this. There's also liability associated with that. And I think for all taxpayers, there's a serious concern about how our state tax money is being used for federal immigration enforcement. There is no reimbursement mechanism, which means that if the state is using state police, diverting them for this purpose, they're not taking care of other state priorities that might not receive any federal funds. And this is a federal area. This is immigration enforcement. So there are a host of concerns that come from how blurry and fussy the policy really is.
This is BNN News. We're talking with Yvonne Espinoza-Madrigal of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Frank Ramirez of EBECC. One more question, Yvonne, about being able to check on people who are being held. There are times you might want to find out something about a person's background, but maybe that's in a database in another state. What about the ability to do that? I mean, does this policy change that one way or the other?
No, this policy expands on what already exists, which are very robust channels and networks for being able to obtain, like you were saying, tapping into a database to obtain records, whether those are criminal records or other types of records. There's already collaboration happening just organically across state lines between local, state, and federal officials in many areas. So we really don't need this, and I think an important point here is that our policy was not this. This is a new policy, and there's been no showing, no explanation of why we need this new policy that presents so much liability, so many fiscal concerns, and that is dangerous for community policing and for public safety. So I think we have questions.
Thank you both very much, Yvonne Espinoza-Madrigal and Frank Ramirez. In a moment on BNN News, making the city's culture more diverse, we'll talk with Malia Lazu from Epicenter Community.